On Veterans Day this year, in a town square in Cedar Fork, Georgia, a man everybody calls a hero is finally going to put on a medal he has never once worn in 23 years. Nobody in town knows why he's kept it locked in a wooden case in his workshop all this time. They've assumed modesty. They've assumed the war was simply too painful to revisit. They're wrong on both counts. What Gabriel Ashford has been protecting for 23 years isn't a memory too painful to touch. It's a name he's never once let this town say out loud, the name of the man he believes should have been standing in the square instead of him. But to understand why, you first need to meet the 8-year-old boy who asked him for something no one else in Cedar Fork ever thought to ask. Cedar Fork, Georgia is red clay and pine trees and a town square with a gazebo nobody's used for anything but pigeons in a decade. There's a diner, a hardware store, and a little historical marker outside the post office that reads Home of Sergeant Gabriel Ashford, Silver Star recipient, a plaque that's been there since 2004. Put up by folks who were proud and never once asked the man himself if he wanted it. Toby Lindgren works the counter at the hardware store most afternoons. And in 3 weeks, he ships out for basic training. He's 18, wiry, with the kind of nervous energy that comes from a decision he's terrified is either the best or worst one he's ever made. He hasn't told his parents how scared he actually is. He tells them he's ready. He tells his recruiter the same thing. He hasn't told anybody the truth, which is that some nights he lies awake, wondering if he's the kind of person who freezes up when it matters. And there's no way to know that about yourself until it's far too late to change your answer. Gabriel Ashford comes into the hardware store every Thursday for something small, same as clockwork. He's 54, broad through the shoulders even now, silver starting hard at his temples. He wears a faded ball cap low over his eyes and a canvas work shirt with grease permanently worked into the cuffs from 30 years, running a small engine repair shop out of his converted workshop. There's a puckered scar along his jaw he's never explained to anyone in town. And around his neck, always, a plain dog tag chain, though if you look closely, there's only one tag on it, and it isn't his own name stamped into the metal. Toby's been meaning to ask him something for weeks. This particular Thursday, he finally does. Mr. Ashford, Toby says, everybody says you're the bravest man in this town. I ship out in 3 weeks and I don't feel brave at all. I was hoping you'd tell me how you did it. Something moves behind Gabriel's eyes. Quick and pained, gone almost before Toby can name it. Son, Gabriel says quietly, you're asking the wrong man. Toby doesn't let it go, not out of stubbornness exactly, more out of the particular desperation of a young man who needs an answer and doesn't have 3 weeks to spare, being polite about it. He starts showing up at Gabriel's workshop after his shifts, offering to sweep up, hand him tools, anything that buys him a few more minutes near a man he's convinced knows something Toby desperately needs to understand before basic training strips away his ability to fake confidence. On the 3rd visit, Gabriel finally says something that isn't a deflection. That plaque outside the post office, Gabriel says, not looking up from the carburetor he's cleaning. I never asked for it. Never wanted it. Town put it up anyway, because folks like a hero, and they decided I was going to be theirs whether I agreed to it or not. But you got the silver star, Toby says. That's not nothing. Gabriel's hand goes still on the workbench. His fingers find the single dog tag hanging against his chest. The way they always seem to when the conversation gets close to something he'd rather not walk toward. There's a case in the back of this workshop, Gabriel says slowly. Locked. Been locked 23 years. Everybody assumes there's a medal in there I'm too modest to display. He looks at Toby directly for the first time. That's not why it's locked. It's the first door. Barely open, but open. If your town's got a gazebo nobody uses or a plaque outside the post office nobody quite understands the story behind, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. That night, Toby sits on his bed, staring at his own duffel bag. already half-packed for a departure that felt exciting 3 months ago and feels like free fall now. He thinks about Gabriel's hand going still on that workbench. He thinks about how a man the whole town calls fearless looked, for just a second, like he was carrying something heavier than any metal could account for. Toby hasn't told his recruiter, his parents, or his girlfriend the thing that actually keeps him up at night. Not fear of dying, exactly, but fear of finding out, in the one moment it would matter most, that he isn't the man everyone assumes he'll become the second he puts on a uniform. He's been performing confidence so long he's not sure anymore what real confidence would even feel like. He doesn't say any of that to Gabriel yet, but something about watching an actual decorated veteran flinch at his own reputation makes Toby wonder, for the first time, if the bravest people he's ever met might be the ones best at hiding how unsure they really are. It takes another week before Gabriel tells it properly, sitting on 2 overturned buckets in the workshop's back corner, the locked case visible on a shelf behind him the whole time, like it's listening. We were pinned down outside a checkpoint, Gabriel says. Ambush, close range, worse than anything training prepares you for. There was a kid in my squad younger than you are right now, Toby, if you can believe that, named Miles Draper. Corporal Miles Draper. Best natural soldier I ever served with, and the single kindest human being I ever knew wearing a uniform. Gabriel's jaw tightens. Round came in meant for me, he says. Miles saw it before I did. Pushed me clear. Didn't have time to get himself clear too. The workshop goes quiet, except for a ceiling fan ticking overhead. After that, Gabriel says, I did what I was trained to do. Held the position, got the rest of my squad out. And somehow, out of all of that, the story that made it into a report, the story that earned a medal, was about the part where I held the line. Nobody wrote up the part where I was only standing there at all because Miles Draper gave up his own life to put me there. Did you tell them? Toby asks. The people writing the report. I tried, Gabriel says. Said his name every chance I got. But medals get written up about actions, not about the men who make those actions possible by dying first. There's no box on the form for the real hero already went home in a flag. Gabriel stands, crosses to the shelf, and finally lifts the locked case down, setting it on the workbench between them without opening it. I went to see his mother, right after, Gabriel says. Told her the truth, every bit of it, the part the official report left out. Told her Miles was the reason I came home breathing at all. She held my hands and made me promise I'd make sure people knew that, not just her, but people. The town, anybody who ever called me a hero without knowing his name. So why haven't you? Gabriel's throat works. Because every time I tried, it felt like I was making his death about my own guilt instead of his sacrifice. Like standing up in that town square and saying the real hero is dead, not me, would just be one more way of putting myself at the center of a story that was never supposed to be about me at all. So instead, I just went quiet. Sent his mother a letter every year, never public, never enough. Never wore this. He taps the locked case once. Never finished the only promise that actually mattered. Toby doesn't ask Gabriel to open it. He doesn't have to. Gabriel does it himself, slow, like a man diffusing something. Inside, the silver star, ribbon still crisp, from never once being worn. Beneath it, a folded photograph of 2 young soldiers, arms slung over each other's shoulders, grinning at whoever's holding the camera. And tucked in the corner, a stack of 23 unmailed drafts of a single letter, a public letter. The kind meant for a town newspaper or a Veterans Day program, that Gabriel has apparently started writing every year since 2003 and finished exactly 0 times. I keep starting it, Gabriel says. Every November. Never get further than a paragraph before it feels like it's coming out wrong either, like I'm fishing for sympathy, or like I'm trying to hand off credit I'm supposed to just quietly carry. I don't know how to tell an entire town that their hero isn't the man they think he is without it turning into a bigger story about me instead of about him. Toby looks at the 23 drafts, then at Gabriel. Maybe, Toby says carefully. You're not supposed to write it alone. Toby spends his last 2 weeks in Cedar Fork, doing something other than nervously packing. He tracks down Miles Draper's family through the base's Veteran Family Liaison Office. A slow process of phone calls and patient waiting, and finds that Miles's mother passed a few years back, but Miles had a younger sister, Renata, now in her 40s, living 2 counties over, who still keeps a photo of her brother on her mantle, and has spent 23 years wondering exactly how much the town that put up a plaque for Gabriel Ashford ever actually knew about her brother's name. She wants to come, Toby tells Gabriel, the day before he leaves for basic training, to the Veterans Day ceremony. She said, and I'm quoting her exactly, if he's finally ready to tell it. I'd like to be standing there when he does. Gabriel is quiet a long moment, holding one of those 23 unfinished drafts in his hands. 23 years, he finally says. And all it took was you asking me the wrong question at the right time. The Cedar Fork town square fills up the way it does every November, folding chairs, a small brass band, the mayor with his usual short remarks before handing things over to the guest of honor, who, this year, for the first time in 23 years, is actually going to speak. Gabriel Ashford stands at the small podium in front of that gazebo nobody's used for anything but pigeons in a decade. The silver star pinned to his chest for the first time in his life. Renata Draper seated in the front row, with Toby's own mother beside her, holding her hand. For 23 years, Gabriel says, voice steady, though his hands aren't. This town has called me a hero, and for 23 years, I've let you believe a story that wasn't quite complete. I didn't hold that line because I was fearless. I held it because a 20-year-old corporal named Miles Draper gave his life so I'd have the chance to end. The square goes silent in the way a place goes silent when everyone in it understands, without being told, that they're hearing something true. This medal, Gabriel says, unpinning it carefully and holding it out toward Renata, was earned because of what Miles did, not despite it. I've kept it locked away 23 years because I didn't know how to wear something that felt like it belonged more to his family than to me. I still don't, entirely. But I know now that hiding it away wasn't honoring him either. It was just another kind of silence. He reaches Renata, and instead of pressing the medal into her hands, he simply kneels beside her chair, so they're at eye level, and says the sentence he's spent 23 years failing to finish writing. Your brother is the reason I'm standing here at all. I should have said that out loud a long time ago. Here is what Toby Lindgren carries with him now. 3 weeks into a basic training, he no longer fears quite the same way. Real courage isn't refusing to be called a hero. It's spending 23 years quietly trying to make sure the right person eventually gets remembered as one. Gabriel Ashford spent over 2 decades believing that silence was the most respectful way to honor Miles Draper's sacrifice. It wasn't. Respect isn't kept in a locked case. It's kept the moment you finally find the courage to say a name out loud, in front of the people who never got the chance to know it. And Toby, who left for basic training terrified he wasn't brave enough to become whoever he was supposed to become, carried something different onto that bus than the fear he arrived with. He carried proof that even the bravest people he'd ever meet spent decades unsure of themselves too, and did the hard thing anyway. The plaque outside the Cedar Fork post office has a second line on it. Now, and in memory of Corporal Miles Draper, without whom there would be no story to tell at all. Renata Draper visits Cedar Fork every November now for the ceremony. And she and Gabriel have become something like family, bound together, finally, by a shared grief instead of a silence that kept them strangers for over 2 decades. Toby writes Gabriel a letter every few months, from wherever the army sends him next. He says it's the least he can do for the man who taught him that the bravest thing you can carry into any uniform isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to tell the truth anyway. Even 23 years late, if there's someone in your own life who deserves more credit than they've ever publicly received, a quiet hero standing behind the one everybody sees, we hope tonight's story is a gentle nudge to finally say their name out loud. We believe the truth we're afraid will make us look smaller usually ends up being the very thing that makes us whole. Has someone in your life ever given credit to another person before taking any for themselves? We'd love to hear that story in the comments below. If tonight's story moved you, we'd be so grateful if you'd hit like and subscribe. It helps stories like this one reach the people who need to hear them most. Thank you for spending this evening with us. We'll see you in the next story.